Ross. To talk about or try to talk about here is Clinton's economic plan. But again, as I've already said, I don't want to discuss it in any great economic detail. There are a couple of reasons for this. I guess, first of all, because I couldn't even if I wanted to. And secondly, if I did, this would certainly become a very boring exercise indeed. We don't want to listen to a lot of facts and figures just yet. But what I would like to do here is talk about it from an everyman point of view. I mean, from an ordinary citizen's point of view. And what perhaps is my own ordinary man point of view's understanding of the plan. I think at this time this is important because while experts will continue to argue and discuss the feasibility and practically of the various parts of the plan, it's going to be us, the ordinary men and women of the country, that are going to have to bear the burden of the plan. And I really think there will be a burden. So this is basically the approach I want to take to the whole business today.
So then, the first question you might want to ask is why a plan and why now? As you may or may not know, every year in the United States, the president is required to stand before a joint session of the Congress and deliver what is known as the State of the Union speech. In this speech, the president is supposed to tell us how the country is doing, what is the state of the union. In the past, this has been an opportunity for the president to act as a sort of national cheerleader and give a speech full of rah-rahs and everything's fine. We're doing all right. But this year, things were a little different because when it was time for the president to give the speech, the president who was going to do so was newly elected, and he was elected to deal with the economic problems of the country. In addition, he was giving a speech at a time when the national consciousness of the concern for our economic problems are probably higher than they have been for a number of generations. So why now? The Constitution requires it. What a plan. The country needs it. Economic is a dance, and at this time it's a mystery subject. So if we are going to approach this economic plan from an everyman point of view, we must always begin with personal economic conditions. What I mean by this is that everyone's awareness of the general economic is always based on his or her own everyday life, their own personal economic conditions. Things like, do I get paid enough? Can I buy the things I need? Can I save a little? And can I afford a few extra now and then? When the answers to most of these questions are no, or if not no, not always, then perhaps we begin to worry. I think this is oftentimes the basic problem that our leaders have in trying to convince us that we need to change, or the country needs to change. Perhaps we need to pay more taxes or sacrifice a bit. In the past, we have heard the experts often talk about the national debt and what a serious problem it is, and how it must be dealt with. When every man hears this, we all nod and say, yes, yes. But then, when we look at our everyday lives, we are doing all right. The experts are saying that the country is going to hell in handbasket, but we couldn't see it. We're still making enough money. We're still making the house payments all right. We even have a little bit left over to buy a few trinkets now and then. So we may be going to hell, but it sure feels comfortable. But all that's changed. I personally have not lived in the US for a few years, so I have not been directly affected by economic difficulties there. But I can impart to you some of the things I learned through discussion with the family and friends and things that I have learned during my last trip back. Before I came to Taiwan, I was what we call a working man. I was blue collar. I worked in various cabinet shop making furniture. I did this for 10 years or so. And during these 10 years, I worked in 7 different shops. I worked for 7 different companies. In most other jobs, it pays you stay in one place to stay put and work in the same company. But in the cabinet trade, it's better to move around and work at many different places. This way you can learn many different things, and it's also a way to get yourself a raise in pay. If the company you are working for won't give you a raise, then you just go someplace else. And usually you can get your raise that way. I did this on a number of occasions myself. When times are good, when the economy is good, this is easy enough to do because all the shops have plenty of work and are always looking for someone else.
At the various shop I work in, the number of employees range anywhere from 3 to 4 to 20 or 30, but it was always the big shops that had lots of work. And if you could get a job at one of these big shops, you were fairly certain of a secure future. On my last trip back to the United States, I looked in some of the old places I used to work. I checked up on one of the big shops that I work in. When I worked there were 25 guys working in the shops. It wasn't there anymore. I looked into another one. This one was always smaller but always had a good reputation. And as a consequence, we had plenty of work. This shop was reduced to 2 guys only, and they were barely holding on. My friends who work in the same business told me they were having a hard time too. But not everyone was in this bad fix. There are still some places where they're doing just fine, but there were enough shops out of business and enough people having a hard time that to make me realize that economic conditions in the country had truly changed this time, and that your average person this time was truly concerned about the economic future of the country. All this change and all this concern was taking place during the period just before the presidential elections. And as in all presidential elections, the candidates must talk about their plans for the economy, but this time, the people were listening with a bit more attention because the worsening economic conditions were affecting them personally. So suddenly all this talk found a very attentive audience. The general populace, your everyman, began to see that all this talk about deficit reduction and need for new economic direction for the country was worth listening to. And maybe even acting on. So this being the case, it was really no wonder that when then President Bush said that things were really alright, and all we had to do was wait, that the economy would fix itself, that at election time 60% of the people voted for someone else. It was in this general mood of concern and desire to do something other than just wait for the economy to fix itself that Bill Clinton was elected. The mere fact, I think, that Bush was voted out of office did much to relieve the nation's sense of concern and worry. Never mind that the newly elected president, wasn't going to move into the White House for another 2 months. We still had problems. But we had elected a new guy who said he was going to focus like a laser beam on the economy. Maybe things would begin to improve now that we had elected this new president. But all this is just background because once the election is over, all the analysis is done, the president, or should I say,
the new president must begin to act on and deliver on some of the promises he has made. The American people are generally forgiving, but their patience with politicians, new presidents are not, is generally very short. So once he was in the White House, Clinton was under pressure to deliver. This president may have had one of the shortest honeymoon presidency in recent memory. People are very concerned and they want action. So, okay, Mr. Clinton, you're in the White House. Now, what are you going to do? This then was the general mood of the country as the president strolled into the joint session of the Congress to deliver his State of the Union and tell us how he's going to get us out of this mess. It was a good speech. I caught most of it. The morning it was broadcast live here in Taiwan, I myself was impressed with Clinton's command of the subject matter and his willingness to tell the country that the road ahead of us was not going to be easy. Presidents don't like to stand up before the American people and tell them that their taxes must go up and the service that the government provides need to be cut. Presidents don't get elected by bringing bad news to the people. And yet, Clinton, who had not been in the White House for 2 months, stood up, looked at the country square in the eye, and said, "Your taxes need to be raised if we are going to fix what's wrong with this nation." This voter for one was impressed. For our purpose here today, all the details of the plan are not that important. From the everyman point of view, the most important part of the plan seems to be proposed energy tax. This is a tax that will be charged on the energy content of fuel, the so-called BTU tax. This is important because while not everybody has big stock market investments that might be affected by the different parts of the plan, everybody uses fuels of one sort or another. Even if you don't have a car, you still need to heat your home with natural gas or oil. This means in the area of consumption, every man and woman taxes would go up under the plan. The estimates I have seen say the average household yearly cost in this area will increase by about $100 to $130 a year. This certainly doesn't seem like a large burden and could be borne without too much difficulty. Will people pay the increase willingly? The answer, I think, is yes, but only if they believe that the government is using the money responsibly. The other tax increases in the plan are generally aimed at the rich, and by the rich, the president here means those individuals or families making over $200,000 a year. In this area, he should have no problem, because generally speaking, the population will always support increased taxes on the rich. America may think of itself as the land of opportunity, where everyone has the chance to get ahead and get rich, but deep in the national psyche, I think there is a basic distrust of people who have too much money or a lot of money. There will always be those who might argue that if you tax the rich too much, then this discourages them from investing in the economy, which in turn will create jobs for us, ordinary people. This was the basic idea behind the tax cuts during the Reagan era. The Reagan years, but the money the rich saved during these years were spent on direct consumption and not on investments. That might have created jobs for the rest of us. So the average guy has no problem with the soak the rich tax policy.